שצבענו בה באדמה חומה, כשצמאנו זרע באדמה חמה, וחפרנו בה וחרשנו בה ואהבנו.
Shalom, everybody. Today our Torah portion is from Parashat Bamidbar. We begin a new book, the Book of Numbers. And I've entitled my message for today, Can't I Be Counted On? Now, understanding how something works is not the same as making it work. It reminds me of a quote I heard from my friend Miriam. I eat healthy in my mind. It may sound funny, but I think like that sometimes. Just because I know something, I think it's naturally going to happen, but it doesn't. Now, over the course of our lives, we hear many things that we accept as truth, but later on we find out that it was someone else's truth. It was their truth. Now, the question arises, is there an ultimate truth? If something is simply my truth, our truth, which we then act upon, it can definitely lead us down the wrong path. I've had so many of those experiences in my life. Whether we believe it or not, there is only one ultimate truth maker. He's the creator of truth. It's so easy to follow the advice of the many people who may sound right. But if their advice does not line up with the principles that the maker of truth gave to humanity, then we would do well to rethink. That's our struggle on this journey of life. And that's what we'll be seeing in this book of Bamidbar, Israel's journey over the next 38 years in the wilderness. It was only supposed to take 10 to 13 days, but it ended up taking 38 years. Now, during the first 2 years after the Israelites left Egypt, while they're still at the base of Mount Sinai, they heard the voice of truth. They heard the principles from the mouth of God handed down to their leader Moses. They had seen God's miracles, one after another. So they knew that if he said he would do something, they could count on him. But now the Israelites would begin this journey that would test them in ways that they could never have imagined. So why did it take so long? Why did it take 38 years before that second generation would arrive at the border of the land promised to them, the land of milk and honey? The stories we will read in the book of Bamidbar, they will tell us, and they will serve as the example of what we should and should not do, so that we can learn how to make the right choices in our own lives. Our Rabbi used to quote his father, who would say, "Son, it's so much easier when we learn from the mistakes of others. It hurts a lot less." When we forget the past, when we forget the lessons that we can learn from the past, we are doomed to repeat its mistakes. That's why the Torah is so valuable. But let's not get caught up in the minutiae, in the smallest of details, because then we lose the important principles that are hidden within its many stories. Now here, Bamidbar will begin with God telling Moses to take a census, to count the men who were able to go to war. Remember, they were 20 years and up. These were the young men who he would count to go to war from each tribe. He formed the army first because he knew the battles that lay ahead for the Israelites, just as there are battles that lie ahead for each one of us every day of our lives during our entire lifetime. Bamidbar has been translated in several ways. One is in the desert or wilderness. How often do we feel like we're in the desert, like we're deserted, isolated, thinking that we wrestle with our problems alone? It's so hard to stop trusting those feelings that attack us, that roll around in our heads, those thoughts that don't want to leave us. that weaken our resolve to go on and that try to bring us down. Even when we have an understanding that when we are not alone, that we have been given the tools to rise above these daily attacks on our peace, our shalom, we still hesitate. We hesitate to turn to those close to us in our community. That's when we need to reach out to each other more than ever. That's what the Torah is teaching us, that community is so important. How opposite is this to how people are living today? Alone, detached from family and community. Bamidbar 1 says, and Moses and Aaron took these men who were pointed out by their names. These were men of renown, leaders and princes, and we heard them called by name. Moses took the time to not only write their names, but to individually count the men in their tribes who were ready to be trained for war. There would be over 600,000 of these men. It wasn't a huge army in comparison to the huge armies we see today, but large enough to make a statement to their enemies who would see them coming. These men represented the people who were counted to them, their families, their women, their children, their servants, bringing the estimated amount to about 3 million people, which consisted of both Israelite, natural-born Israelite, and non-Israelite, those who joined us, who would travel as a unit through the desert. To keep order among that many people, they would all need to know their roles. The Levites were not counted for the physical battles. Theirs would be at a different level, spiritual. Their role was to take charge of the things set apart to represent the God of Israel. They would go ahead of the men in battle to show their enemies that these people did not fight alone. Our choice is simple. Will we fight our battles alone or within community? Will we battle alone or constantly remind ourselves that the Creator of the universe has promised to help us through everything? We see many people around us who are facing crises in their lives, but rather than listening to the voice of reason, they panic, and the wise words of advice by those who love them are not heard. All we can do is watch helplessly as they feel like they're suffering alone. Proverbs 15:22 says, without counsel, purposes are discouraged, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. In other words, there is wisdom in the counsel of many. Last week, we read about the Shemitah, where we were told to leave the land light fallow in the 7th year, when they would allow others to glean from it. They would plant in the 8th year and reap the harvest in the 9th year. 3 years we had to trust God. This was to build bitachon, trust that God would provide for us. Now the Israelites would begin their journey of putting the gift of faith into action, turning it to trust, just as we, each of us, have to do every single minute of every single day of our lives. It's important to know that to trust is a decision that we make, just as to love is a decision. It's a word of action. It's not a feeling. God gave us free will so that we can choose to do the right thing or the wrong thing. If we allow ourselves to fall apart in the face of adversity and give up, let us realize and admit that this is our choice. Once we acknowledge that, then the process can begin of turning things around with God's help and with the help of those around us. We are not alone. At the end of this parasha, we read that the sons of Kahat and the sons of Aaron were counted and given very precise instructions and specific tasks to do. If they wanted or tried to do anything other than what they were asked to do, the consequence of their disobedience would result in death. It sounds harsh, but we saw the deaths of the two older sons of Aaron who had offered strange fire. And much later, we will see how King David failed to warn his friend Uzzah, who reached out and tried to steady the cart carrying the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. I thought of the job of the firemen who are called to the scene of a horrendous fire. The chief evaluates the situation and gives each one directive on how best to proceed in order to save lives. If any of them decide that they prefer to do someone else's job than their own, for whatever reason, pride, jealousy, they could jeopardize the lives of not only the people to be rescued, but also the firefighters themselves. The result can be death, emphasizing the importance of accepting and sticking to our roles. God gave us principles to live by, and he wants us to choose life. When God told Moses to count the people for their roles, they would be counted on, relied upon by the others so that everything would run smoothly as a unit. That's living in community. Our society today is suffering terribly because it has become so individualistic and self-centered. People want the community to serve them instead of learning the value of giving and serving for the greater good of all. I thought of Bob Dylan's song, "You Gotta Serve Somebody." It's not easy to serve somebody, but it's a far cry from being a slave. Serving means first that we are chosen. Chosen means that we have responsibility. Responsibility means that we have to use our free will to choose to fulfill our calling, our role upon this earth. We can choose to do right or wrong, good or evil, life or death. We all have to serve, and we can choose to serve only ourselves, resulting in a very lonely journey and a very sad existence. In community, we are each counted. Our names, which represent us, each have value. It means that we are counted on by others to keep our word and fulfill our role, even if it seems like the lowliest of positions in comparison to others. Individualism can never work. It cuts us off. In Hebrew, the word is karet. Being karet or cut off from the community leads to death. So let's ask God to help us serve others. Let us each be willing to step into our calling, no matter how menial. And as we do, let us enter the doors that God opens for us to joy and fulfillment. Shabbat Shalom.